Welcome to the HBTVS podcast. I'm your host, William, and join me today will be Sean.
Hello.
And in this episode, we'll be discussing Friday the 13th, the 2009 reboot slash remake slash non-original continuity sequel movie that was, somewhat divisive from what I've seen in recent years because it came out in 2009 on, I think, around Valentine's Day, and made a lot of money in its first weekend, then kind of plateaued and dropped pretty quickly. But still worldwide made enough money that they could have made a sequel, but just the reaction to it was so mixed from the fans, they haven't really touched that property since then.
And to the legal issues.
And the legal issues that are propped up in recent years. But yeah, a lot of that stuff. So you had, I don't remember what the continuity was. So you had Friday the 13th, part 8, and then you had Jason Goes to Hell. And then they had Jason X, which was off in the distant future. And then, because Jason Goes to Hell ended with them using the Necronomicon and the knife or whatever from Evil Dead to, Jason gets killed and Freddy's hand pulls the mask down. And then I think they intended to do Freddy vs. Jason, but then it just got held up and didn't happen. So then they did Jason X, right? And then that was set off in the far future. And then they did Freddy vs. Jason in 2003.
I skipped Jason X in theaters.
Yeah, I've only seen bits of it on different cable channels. And then
same here. And because it's not in the collections, that's why I don't have it too. I have a 1 through 8 collection, and then another with this remake and the Nightmare on Elm Street remake and Freddy vs. Jason. I just never managed to procure it. Yeah,
because Jason Goes to Hell and Jason X are kind of treated as redheaded stepchildren and not really included in a lot of those types of collections. But yeah, and then from Freddy vs. Jason on, so that was 2003 and 2009, they had the kind of reboot remake of really the first 4 movies in the franchise, kind of the or maybe the first 3, I don't know, the pre-Supernatural Jasons. And then since then, there hasn't been anything. There was talks of different types of sequels over the years, where there was one where we kind of found footage and one where it had been set in the winter, and all those just kind of
some fan stuff like Never Hike Alone.
Yeah, there's been a number of fan films, and there's
the game.
Yeah, then the Friday the 13th, the game, and then there was the legal issues that cropped up between was it Victor Miller and Sean Cunningham and the owners of the movie about who owns the story, and if you make them, so who owns what characters, and blah,
it's
blah.
like the masked Jason character, versus Jason's mom in the first film.
Yeah.
And
so a lot of tricky stuff going on with that I think is still being worked out in the courts. But so the last Jason movie we got was 2009's Friday the 13th. That was kind of weirdly prepositioned as, remake, reboot.
Platinum Doom. So some people already went into it it's Michael Bay's.
Yeah, because Platinum Doom's
Friday the 13th.
They had done Texas Chainsaw Massacre and been involved in some other properties. And then Platinum Dunes, then they also the year later did Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
And then those movies kind of put them on ice for a while until they did The Purge with Blumhouse and a few years after that.
On their horror end,
properties.
yeah, because they were still doing Transformers, and they've done the Ninja Turtle reboots that,
fizzled after 2 movies.
Yeah.
But so before we get into discussing...
we can just go into it.
Yeah,
we can just go into it because,
okay.
We'll talk about another movie next podcast.
Yes, we'll go straight into discussing this movie. So... spoilers throughout because it's a movie. It's hard to spoil. It's, they kill people. Jason kills people. And,
this is also not available on streaming anywhere for free. It's not, well, maybe illegally, but it's not on Netflix or Shudder or Prime or anything like that. So I think it's only $3 to rent.
And I don't think I've seen it on those services recently. I don't sometimes movies come off and on.
Yeah. I feel
don't
like
remember
it was
ever seeing it.
Maybe Stars or somewhere. That's where I had it at some point.
Yeah, a lot of these types of movies will end up in the catalogs of Stars or HBO or Showtime at different points in time. And then they'll be in there for 6 months or 9 months or a year. Then they filter out when the deal ends. So this is one that you have to rent or buy if you want to. And it's also AMC, I think, has had this one in the October marathons. So that's where I saw it the first time, I think. Because I didn't see this in theaters. I just saw it on cable and bits and pieces. Or I think I saw most of it. because the movie starts off kind of like as a flashback to essentially a recreation of the very end of the first Friday the 13th film with Pamela Voorhees being killed by a camp counselor.
Yeah, the very beginning. That's right. Yeah.
And then from there, you jump forward, and then you have like the group of young adult, because they're not teens, I don't think. They're like young adults that are going to
college.
They're going to find their weed stash. And this is the part where, like I said, it's been years since I watched this, when I recognized that there was a Blue Velvet reference, because one of the characters, they're talking about like the beer that they brought or whatever, and he's like, "Oh, did you bring that Heineken?" He's like, "I don't want that. I want some Pabst Blue Ribbon." I was like, "That's weird that they would reference that for the audience they're going for with this." But it's obvious that, like, the screenwriters are probably a fan of a lot of stuff, because this movie has a ton of visual callbacks to the original films, through like Jason coming through the window and being in a barn type thing. Like, there's just a lot of stuff that are callbacks in the very last scene of the movie. So just a lot of visual things that are referencing
the Force Awakens of Friday the 13th films.
Yeah, so but this, like I said, broke the continuity, and, so you have the teens that go out, or the young adults that go out and look for the weed, and then Jason kills all of them, and then you cut forward to a few months. So you have like the 20 years ago bit, or however many years ago. You have the 1 month ago, and then the present. And then that's where the story kicks off with all the characters you see through the remainder of the movie.
And then, as a lot of people mentioned too, like the first real segment, that is like, I don't know, however long, that is like just a short film, is like a really, really good Jason short film, basically. I remember loving it. I think it was a great opening to the film.
With the guys looking for the weed?
Yes, yeah, like that was just like a fun, like, okay, this is about what I need out of a Friday the 13th film, and I really don't need much more, so it's like, okay, maybe Friday the 13th would work well as a series, as you've mentioned before.
Well, and two, like, so part of this movie, so in the cast, you have Jared Padalecki, who's in Supernatural, which I've never watched that show. I know it has a huge following. Derek,
my wife also said he's in something like Seventh Heaven or Gilmore Girls, I think, as well. That's what she recognized him from.
I mean, too, the Platinum Dunes era was very much about casting CW and UPN or whatever those networks were, like, because Jessica Alba had been on Seventh Heaven or whatever. So it was very much about plucking these actors from these CW
because
series.
Everybody that was fans of Texas Chainsaw and Friday the 13th are definitely watching Seventh Heaven.
Yeah. And then, you had... so Jared Padalecki was Clay Miller. His sister was Amanda Rigetti, who was Whitney Miller. Derek Mears is Jason Voorhees. Danielle Panabaker is Jenna. Or Panakner, I'm not sure how you pronounce her last name. But then, like, the rest of the cast, like the guy Trent, that's kind of like the lead kind of douchebag guy.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I think he played that character very well.
Yeah, he played that character very well. And like, there was a character Chewie that was like one of their friends. And then there was the one guy that was in it, Ryan Hansen, who I remember from Party Down. So he was like the blonde guy that was driving the speedboat.
Oh, yes. Yeah. He's good.
Yeah. So
and too, in the beginning of it, the opening segment, you've got the lawyer from
Ben
Silicon
Feldman,
Valley,
who was the lawyer on Silicon Valley, and Ginsburg on Mad Men. In this movie, he was Richie. Like, the one thing I'll say about this movie that I, once we got in, like, watching it, is that it did feel Michael Bay-ized in that a lot of the character interactions, like the beginning, like the Richie character played by Ben Feldman, when like he was talking to his friend, like behind their backs, he's like doing like sexual stuff and all kinds of jokey stuff. And the thing is, like, I don't like, a lot of movies do that, and they do that lean in very hard. And then it's just a very unnatural thing, because in real life, the audience for that would be one person, like, that you're doing all of this for. And people, I just don't, maybe...
I've done that. Not the sexual, but like...
To the extent and the volume.
No, not to the extent of volume. I mean, it is played out, but I've, obviously done stuff behind people's back, just the audience of one person. But yes, no, I totally get that.
Because, like, I've done that too. You joke around, but I don't, like, sit there and go, oh.
Yeah, no.
And, like, the entire time. Because honestly, if you're wanting to get with somebody, that's a good way to kind of kill that vibe if you keep doing that.
I mean, I think the people in the second segment, or most of them, aside from maybe the lead girl in the second segment and the the Asian guy and the black guy too, but most everybody else is pretty annoying, and I think you're supposed to be like, oh, I'm ready for these people to die.
Yeah.
I think that was kind of the point, but it is one of those things where it's like, okay, well, I'm not supposed to like these characters, but it's a weird thing with slashers. I mean, a lot of times people will develop the characters and like, well, you're supposed to hate them because you're supposed to be glad that they're getting killed. I don't know. It's just like a snake that eats itself sometimes. Like, okay, well, why am I watching this then? Okay, I'm watching it because I want to see them get killed, but I'm just seeing them get killed. And
well, you quickly establish, your kind of good guys or bad guys in terms of the script. Because, like Clay, the supernatural dude, his character set up as like a good guy that's just looking for his sister. That was a part of the group that went missing from the first segment, like the 1 month ago. So he's looking for his sister. And then he runs into the group that has Jenna and Trent and all them. Then the guy Trent's being a real dick to him for no real reason and kind of stepping up to him and trying to intimidate him. I was like, but you're actually taller and bigger than him. So, but, so you have like that element, like the setup of he's looking for his sister that went missing as part of the group. And now the group in the first segment, his sister, Whitney, was kind of like the normal one. Kind of like the final girl quality character out of that original batch, because like not the one that was having sex with someone.
Yeah.
I mean, that first part did have some brutal kills, like hung upside down over the fire in the sleeping bag. So like this movie does have some brutal kills, and then like when they're in Jason's shack, kind of like the knife coming up through the floor.
Yeah, I think that was a great sequence.
So they set up some pretty brutal kills in this, and then you have the beginning where Jason is sackhead Jason, non-mask wearing Jason. And so they kind of like do part 2 a little bit with this opening segment, kind of just, speed through that. And then you cut to the present day, which is a month later. And then that one's more of like a part 3 and 4, because of people staying at like a nearby house to the camp. And of course, you have them go to like the store and have the very stereotypical encounters with people at the store right before they go to the place that's going to be their, death. But they didn't have like the harbinger like Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah.
They didn't have the person that told them, you kids don't need to go out
there. Or
there.
from the first Friday the 13th or second or first one, I guess.
Yeah, from the first and second ones. Like, you had Ralph. Or whatever, that was kind of that character.
Which really, this story, I think this story is a fine enough idea where it's like, okay, we get some kills out of the way, and then one character goes to look for his sister or whatever. There's not a story like that in all the other films, I don't think, right?
Not really. Yeah. So the first one
I know it's not the structure's not there of the other ones.
So the first film was just, the camp counselors start dying after they've told the story about Jason dying or whatever. And then the second one starts off with him killing Allison and then going back after the counselors. And
suddenly much older.
They're just new camp counselors. And then the third one,
Corey Feldman?
No, the third one is where Jason gets the mask and they have the dude that does all the prank stuff.
Yes.
And then they have like the biker gang and stuff like that. And then the fourth one is when they're what's his name from Back to the Future? Crispin Glover does the dance and all that stuff, and they're at the house that's just close to the property.
Yeah.
Because I think theoretically, like parts 2 through 4 all take place within like a weekend, or a very close proximity, because it just picks up immediately after the next.
Yeah, I think when we did those films, we were like, okay, wait, only one of these is Friday the 13th.
Yeah,
I said on Friday the 13th.
Yeah, so you have all of those types of elements, but like so this movie kind of rolls all that mythology of those multiple movies into one, and has the kind of characters just going to the cabin to party, and then the character going to look for a missing sibling that was part of the original batch, which, like you said, didn't really happen in the originals in that way.
So I think it was a pretty good premise, the premise, far as the structure of this film, and not making. I guess even any segments being too long of like, okay, well, nothing's really happening as far as like any interesting story stuff because, it's a good way to truncate it. But also give you what you want.
It's all parsed out so that it's not spending way too much time and overstaying its welcome on certain parts of it. So like you said, it has some pretty brutal kills. It has the beginning part with like the the sleeping bag over the fire, which was then kind of replicated in Mandy in a different way. Like you said, you had like the floorboard, the knives. You have like an arrow through the head, which is fine.
I mean, that's I think the arrow thing, that's when some people turn on this film when they're like, oh, wait, he's a really good archer. And then they're running and then him being a good archer. But it's like, for me, it's like, it's all over the top. I'm fine if he shoots an arrow through some guy's head and
the thing that I would say was problematic in this movie to me when you rewatch it. So Derek Mears as Jason is very intimidating because some of them were more lumbering a little bit, I could just more easily get away.
He's the Zack Snyder running zombies.
Because Jason did run in, like, was it part 3 or 2, if I'm trying to remember which one. Okay. It was more when they leaned into the Michael Myers side of the character that, you didn't really see him transferring across the locations at all. You just kind of saw him, like, walking and then, boom, he's still, 1,000 yards away. But this one he was running. So like I said, like, rewatching this, the elements that stuck out to me was, so he's a master archer because he's able to hit somebody driving a speedboat at, 30, 40 miles an hour on the water.
That's his supernatural element.
Hundreds of yards away from the shoreline. He's able to pick up an axe and perfectly land it in someone's back as they're running 30 yards away. And if that person just zigzagged, they might have lived. Or they probably would have died still, but they would have lived.
He goes
longer.
to the axe throwing bars all the time in town.
Yeah, because that's like a big thing here locally. They have a throwing axe bar. So you have the element of he can hit somebody with a bow and arrow across the lake perfectly. He can throw an axe perfectly. But then when it gets to a later part of the movie, there's a character because everybody he encounters, he kills immediately and viciously. And then later they throw that all out the window when he encounters our lead character and then fights him and doesn't kill him.
Well, too, I mean, I guess it was let's see, I believe in the garage or whatever, was it the Asian guy that's in the garage? Or whatever. He gets killed immediately out there, though, doesn't he? I don't know. Somebody even in the garage like hits him with a pole or something and knocks him back pretty easily too. Some of that just feels like, they're easily like defending him off. I mean, all the arrow stuff I didn't mind because I'm like, those films are always over the top.
I think it was the guy that killed the axe that kind of knocked him around. Okay, because the other guy was back there like looking for wine or something.
Yeah, I always just felt like, whatever. They're just trying to do the most over the top kills, and I don't care if whatever, because that's why people are going to see these movies. But I know some people do not like that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, because like the thing that...
it makes no sense that would even be possible.
Yeah.
Except for it's Hawkeye from Avengers.
Yeah. So like laying out what happens. You have the flashback that shows that, Jason Voorhees' mom was killed by a camp counselor and he watched and then grew up on his own in the wilderness, becoming a stone cold killing machine over the course of time. And then, people went out there looking for their hidden weed patch that they had planted seeds from. And then he encounters them and kills them. Except for one. And he, for some reason, for the first time ever in the history of the franchise, keeps somebody as a hostage or a prisoner. Which is the big twist. But I mean, it reveals it somewhat early on in that second part of the movie. And I think that was another thing people took issue with, is that he had never really did that before. Yeah. Unless she looked exactly like the actress that played his mom or something, then I don't see why he keeps her alive but kills everyone else so quickly and brutally. So the guy, Clay...
He is a little bit different Jason in this. He has the whole light set up. He basically, it seems like he's
a survivalist.
Yeah, he's a survivalist.
So like Clay's sister is the one that she didn't get killed previously in the opening portion. She was just taken hostage or prisoner. So, they quickly find like his property, him and I'm forgetting everybody's names, him and Jenna. So Clay and Jenna find Jason's property as they're searching it, and he's killing other people. And then they hear somebody coming, and it was interesting to me because they're on this property, which is, I guess, like a creepy place. And then they do immediately, when they hear somebody coming, hide. It's like, well, at this point, do they know that there's a murderer, or is it just like there's some weird shit?
I mean, I would be afraid anyway. I would hide too.
Yeah, I mean, I probably would not put myself out there.
I've been in that situation. I've been like in abandoned houses and thought I heard something and went and hid,
Yeah. So you had like that element, and then they see the dead body, which is like their friend that, like the girl who got killed while she was out in the water, who decided to go water skiing without a top on. So just kind of the gratuitous, giving the people what they wanted. And then you have the part like where they escape and then get back to Trent and like the rest of the group, and they don't believe him. And then they call the cop who shows up, who promptly gets killed. And, like the friends like Lawrence and Chewie get killed. But there is this scene where Lawrence and Chewie are sitting on the couch, and there's the girl that's just dancing in front of them for some reason. And it's funny to me because Cabin in the Woods has a scene that's almost the exact same, where the girl's just sitting there dancing in front of everybody like that. And then Cabin in the Woods, they even amp it up to 11 because she then even goes up and like starts kissing and licking like the wolf head on the wall. Yeah. And in this movie, they don't go quite that far. But like Cabin in the Woods it was released after this movie by a few years, but it was in production when this movie was coming out. So I think that was just them playing up a trope that just so happened to be in this other movie. That
they also were aware of, obviously, because they added it in this film. This film seems very aware of trying to... I feel like they really did try to walk that line of giving people what they thought they wanted,
Yeah, because, it had...
I think they tried, for sure.
Then it had some throwback visuals to the classic films. Because like you said, you had the beginning where Pamela gets her head cut off, and then you had like his little shack, and then you had an element when Clay and Jenna it's him and his sister, I think. They're in like a barn or wherever it is, and Jason smashes through the window and pulls them out.
Yeah.
So that was like a throwback to the end of part 2. And so you have some like little moments like that. But the part, like I said, Jason was such an efficient killing machine that easily took out anybody he dealt with, that when he then fights with Clay... Because at first when I saw the movie...
I feel like, he's going a little easy.
When his sister's in the bus still and Clay's on top of it getting bashed around by Jason, see like his head smashed through the window and stuff. I'm like, did they just kill like the lead character of this movie in this really non-cinematic way, kind of off camera? And then 30 seconds later, he's back up and alive. But you see that Jason had a machete on him. Yeah. So it's like, why did he kill everyone else so quickly? And if the only thing he cares about is keeping this girl captive... Why didn't he quickly kill this guy when he's killed everyone else so efficiently, so quickly, and so viciously? So that was a little bit of a disconnect. Mm-hmm. And then, but it is one of the points in some of those movies, I think the original series, part 4 did it, where there's like a guy that's a little bit bigger dude who actually fights with Jason some. And obviously doesn't live, but, at least puts up a fight, or more of a fight than anyone else did. And in this movie, they do that a little bit. But it very much sets up like, here's your 2 leads that are kind of plot armored until the end. And then you have, like where they kind of go to the barn and there's like stuff going on there, and they get the chain around his neck and it pulls him up to hang him, kind of like...
It pulls him into the grinder thing.
Yeah, it pulls him up. First it hangs him for a minute.
That's right.
And then he falls back down. So that was very reminiscent of part 3. And then it pulls him back towards the grinder, the wood chipper, or whatever it is, and then like chokes him out or kills him. And then for some reason they feel the need to take him all the way to the water and drop him in the water, which doesn't make a lot of sense. But I think that was solely to do that throwback visual.
Yeah, they're like, how do we get him to the water? Well,
of him jumping out of the water to pull them down, in a reminiscent scene of the end of the original Friday the 13th. So I think for a lot of people, like I had read, like, like watching this movie, it's not a, in terms of technically, it's better made than the majority of all the original ones, just visuals, audio, all that type of stuff. The gore is really good and convincing, and there's not really like an overabundance of CGI or anything like that. If anything, it's just, is touch up to practical effects. Yeah. So all those elements are there. The characters aren't any stupider than the ones in a lot of the original movies. I don't think that you have as strong of a character, because I still think like an underrated character from that series is Jenny from part 2, who's like one of the only ones that kind of succeed against him and like get away. I mean, there's people that get away in those movies, but you know, like a good protagonist that actually does like something clever and pretends to be his mom for a minute and gets him off guard. But this movie, like since they kind of do the switcheroo on the female protagonist in that third act, because you had like with Jenny's character, all this kind of build up.
Yeah.
And which is a throwback to the name of character from part 2. So you think, oh, she's the final girl. And they do the switcheroo where she's not. Which, I mean, aside from her just being like not terrible like her friends, it still doesn't stick out in a huge way. Well, I guess too, it was also kind of a throwback to the end where they put him in the lake. Was kind of a throwback to Jason Lives, part 6, where they have to put him in the bottom of Crystal Lake and all that stuff. So there's like these nods to those original films, because I think what they thought when they made this movie was, if we do a couple of little neat references here, like to Blue Velvet and then all these original references to the original series, that'll satisfy the horror film fan that's like a franchise fan and knows all this stuff and has seen all these types of movies. And then if we make it broad enough, then it still appeals to the current crowd. And it's, you know, shiny and glossy enough that it'll be able to have major box office potential and get this franchise back up and running to be a cash cow. But then I think what happened is some of the shiny, glossy elements they did and some of the kills and things just made people mad. Like, well, Jason could never hit somebody with a bow and arrow from that distance.
Yeah. And I heard, too, people were disappointed in the way he found his mask, unceremoniously, I guess. But
I mean, the original series, he didn't really get it. And
I saw somebody complain about that, and maybe it was not as big of a group as I thought. But I feel like I remember them or seeing something about, like, there were multiple people. You know, it was a vocal minority, maybe, that were...
him finding it in the
bag or whatever after he kills the
guy with who you try to use the hockey stick or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw this in theaters, I was kind of fine with it all because I was like, okay, I just want to see what they're gonna do with the Jason film. All right, it was not really that boring. You know, it was paced well enough. Like literally, as soon as that second group gets to the cabin, you know, they're inside the cabin for a minute. Guy goes out on the lake. Jason starts killing them. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't spend too much time just with these characters that are going to die anyway.
They very quickly, like he's killing people during the daylight.
Yeah.
They very quickly jump into it because some of those original movies would be a lot of character stuff before you kind of got into the meat of the killing. And a lot of the character stuff in those movies wasn't super well developed.
No.
And it wasn't,
it was attempts to be humorous, but...
So, I mean, this movie, like I said, the thing that's interesting to me with this and even, well, now the Nightmare one's a completely different story. But this one, like, it felt like this wasn't any worse. Like, if it came down to, they said, do you want to watch Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, or this? Yeah. It's like, no, I'd rather watch this 2009 remake or reboot or whatever. Like, would you rather watch Jason Goes to Hell or this? It's like, well, obviously, I'd rather watch the 2009. Jason X, I'd rather watch the 2009. I would still probably, like, when it comes to the original series, I would still probably watch parts 2 and 4 over that. Because 2, I just genuinely like. I just remember it creeping me out when I saw it as a kid, and I think it still mostly holds up. Mm-hmm. It was just, it was fun, and it was still creepy and scary, but, like... Jason Lives, I like a lot, and it's more of a meta movie, and I would still probably watch that over this. I mean, like, it's not the worst movie in the franchise, but I think some people, like, I've seen different people in the horror community talk about, well, like, why does everybody give this so much shit? Like, it's not the worst in the franchise, and I like it. And then some people who are, like, Friday the 13th uber fans would say, well, the mask was bad, the kills are bad, and here's all these things that don't make sense with Jason character-wise. I mean, like, well, his character wasn't very consistent between all those movies.
Yeah, no, a lot of times it was different directors, writers, you know what I mean? And they would just, like, take on their own spin. Different
directors, writers, you rotate the cast in and out, and then you had, like, the part of the movies that were all focused on Tommy Jarvis. Because, like, part 4, I thought, was one of the, good entries in the original franchise. Part 5 is a little bit more mixed. Like, we weren't as big on it as some people are now, kind of like in a reevaluation of it.
I liked part 6. I liked the characters in that. That's when Tommy Jarvis, or don't they bring him back to life or whatever?
Yeah, on accident.
And then I like part 7, the psychic powers one.
Because part 6 felt like they knew what the code was.
Yes.
They were being meta with their own property because they're like, we've already done this 4 times, so there was the first movie that was his mom was the killer, which is like a surprise. But then they did parts 2, 3, and 4 that all had adult Jason killing people. So like we've already done this 3 times, and then part 5 went the switcheroo. If it wasn't really Jason, it was someone else, like a mental institution or like a problem child center.
I think it was a good attempt.
So they're like, so we've tried this misdirection here, and it didn't resonate with fans as much. And then we brought it back to its roots, gave you all the elements you wanted while winking and acknowledging like, hey, this is just fun now.
Yeah, by the time I got there, and I like 7 just because it was like, hey, let's get weird with it.
And then part 7's like, let's have a telekinetic showdown at the end.
And I think, after this 2009 one, I wonder if they're like, because I think they did a good enough job. Yeah, there may be some minor quibbles here and there about some things, but it's like, if you want kind of a amalgamation of those films without the supernatural stuff, what else are you gonna do? Like, I feel like that's also, they're in a holding pattern. Like, they don't know where to take it. Like, for me, go crazy with it. I like the psychic power stuff. Like, we already have those old films. We have the remake. We don't need just another attempt of making a mostly straightforward, realistic Jason, I don't think, because, if you're gonna, we don't need another like Michael Myers with a mask, really.
Yeah.
Let's go crazy, because if we are going to have some more Halloween films, make something different enough,
Yeah. Well, I mean, too, so something that, feel free to use this and steal it if you want, because I'll never have the money or time or interest to actually follow through on it. The idea, that I always joked about is like a short film is, you have a guy and a girl, they go to visit Camp Crystal Lake, and then it's like a dude that's got like black slicked over hair, wearing glasses. He's a journalist, and his girlfriend's a journalist too. And they're just there for the weekend, and they're asleep in their cabin. He's got like his, blindfold on, like earplugs or whatever. And then Jason comes in with like the axe and like hits it on his head, and the axe breaks. So Jason's just kind of looking at it. So then he comes back in with like a different weapon. So in the morning, you see Jason passed out on the floor, and the guy just wakes up and he's like, oh, and he like looks on the floor. And then since Jason approached him first and focused on him, like Lois Lane never wakes up, and she's like, hey, Clark, what happened? So then it's like a Superman. That's why Jason couldn't kill him.
And also, too, you've talked about a Wolverine and Texas Chainsaw Massacre or something, too. You know what I mean?
It's like if you
do something weird.
Obviously, you can't use those types of properties or characters, but you can do something different, because a Friday the 13th with more like young adults or teens for the slaughter, I mean, it's already happened so many times. I don't know what approach you could do that would change it up that much.
Unless you get meta, which people will probably not like.
They will
to
turn
this
on.
franchise.
Well, because, so like I said,
and meta has already been done to death. I mean, I guess if you're very specifically meta about a franchise, that is different than all these general Cabin in the Woods style.
Because Cabin in the Woods is more like zombies, but it was still same general concept of teens go to a cabin.
You mean Cabin Fever?
Or what?
Cabin Fever?
Or Cabin in the Woods was like the murder zombies and all this stuff. So that movie, like I said, there was like references in Cabin in the Woods where even them playing it is completely like a meta type movie, hit some of the same beats as this 2009 one.
Yeah.
Which was a straightforward movie. The funny thing was, a lot of people hated Cabin in the Woods because of the meta self-referential, and then where it goes in the end, like this is a movie on top of an idea. As opposed to, so some of the people that went to that movie and hated it would have liked this movie a lot more because it delivered exactly what the premise was. And you have like this kind of weird juxtaposition of people want what they want. They don't want it subverted. But then if they get it and it's exactly what they asked for, they're like, well,
wasn't different enough.
I wish there was more to it. So I don't really know where you take it at this point. I think mixing in other characters, I mean, you could have a group that goes to I don't know, like at this point, if you have a lake where everybody that goes to it goes missing or dies, you think people would stop going. But it's almost one where you need to make it a period piece, because if it's in the internet era, why would anybody go there? And I think if you have like YouTube...
They're making a true crime documentary on the things that happen.
If you do that...
Which I don't know if Never Hike Alone is that, but...
Or if you have like, a modern vlogger type person that goes down with all their selfie cameras.
I think that's what Never Hike Alone is. I think it's about him being, basically just you know, how those people that shoot video of themselves hiking and all that stuff. I think it's somebody doing that. So it is in that aspect.
So I think that you just kind of have to.
But I heard that's good. You know, people really like that. I just have not sit down to watch it.
I had seen bits and pieces of it, and I just hadn't sit down to watch because fan films are interesting. I mean, I guess you could theoretically say we kind of made one with the Thanksgiving dinner thing, but that was more of like in the style of than a reference for any specific thing. But fan films are tricky because you have to pay homage to the source material. If you get any detail incorrect, you're going to get crucified over it. And at the end of the day, even if you make this amazing filmmaking achievement, I'm not sure that anybody in the filmmaking world usually looks at that as a huge achievement because it's playing with someone else's property.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some people that have turned a successful fan film into a film career, but they already had other stuff going on before that. So, like I said, I haven't seen that fan film. I need to watch it just because I heard so much buzz.
But I mean, you know, what is it that people like? You know, Freddy, it's easy to see what people like about Freddy.
He kills people in their dreams.
And almost, you know, Michael Myers on some level. And I don't, you know, and Jason, it's like, is it just the fact that he has a cool mask, which I love his mask. I always have as a kid, you know, even as a kid, that's what drew me to him. You know, is it just, you know, that they like that Jason is this, almost like super powered mystical creature that can, you know, show up wherever, kill almost immediately in inventive ways. Like what, you know, I don't know what to mine out of that specific framework, other than going so wild with it that it may alienate a lot of people that like the film. I almost feel like if you want to keep it going, you almost go for a whole new audience for people that maybe didn't even care about the remake.
Yeah.
But may see something like, oh, that might be kind of cool. But yeah, I don't know what to do with this character anymore. That is going to appease the fans. That's not the same thing.
Because like, you know, like you said with this movie with 2009, like it delivered a lot of what those prior movies did. It's Jason killing people. And I think people's argument was he was too efficient or effective or, you know, is too varied in how he's able to kill people so easily.
And it's like maybe, but would it made the film like leaps and bounds better? No, you know what I mean? Like it would have like, okay, if this could have been a little bit more interesting, but you still like, if you still have the same teen characters, like
well, I think part of it too. So like, so the boat kill with the bow and arrow, a way that you make that far more plausible is if they're closer to the shore and he's talking to her about getting ready to go off or something. And then Jason shoots him. And then he like, when he slumps down dead, he puts his hand on the throttle and then it takes off and the girl doesn't know. Like that makes more sense, and that gets rid of some of the plausibility issues. Because the other stuff, I don't have as much.
But also doesn't make it that much of a better film. You know what I mean?
It doesn't really change the
like. I know for some people maybe it ruined the film, but for me it's like, well, that it's got. I don't want to say bigger issues, but more shortcomings based on the framework that they're working.
Well, and I think that the kind of this movie was more of they elevated elements and did things that were more cinematic and things like that over. What was naturalistic. I mean, that's how most movies operate. I mean, because something that we've ran into, like researching for shorts and stuff, a lot of things, if you do it the way it is in the real world, people complain because they're used to seeing the elevated version of it in TV and film. Yeah. So that's why guns always have huge muzzle flashes, because in movie and TV they do. In real life, they don't have muzzle flashes that large. But if you don't have it, people think, oh, they cheaped down the budget on that. Not that we've done that stuff. I've noticed that in movies that, you know, the muzzle flash is always way bigger than in real life because they just need it to sell better on screen. So this movie, like some of the jokey stuff with characters like behind people's back, like miming sex stuff, like that seemed like it was just crafted solely to get a laugh out of the audience during those scenes. It was meant to be everyone's watching it, you get the laughs out of that, and then you kind of bring the crowd up, and then you have kills and like, ooh. Yeah. So it was obviously meant to elevate those moments. Because there's a lot of movies where you can just watch them and very easily see like, oh, this is meant to be a comedic beat. That was meant to be a comedic beat. And then sometimes it doesn't work, or it doesn't work nearly as well when you watch it at home without an audience. Because sometimes somebody else reacting to it in the same aisle as you to the theater makes you then react to it more positively because like, oh, they're enjoying this.
Yeah.
As opposed to you watch it at home, you just roll your eyes. It's like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
So I think this movie has those elements where they just kind of elevated things to be more cinematic. And that, I think, kind of put some fans off. And they, you know, kind of did a new version of Jason where he runs around and is far more efficient and has lights set up and, has, you know, set up his place to have booby traps. and things, and he kept somebody hostage. Now, the question is, what did she eat for a month? There's a lot of questions about that.
He's a master archer and hunter, so...
He's like, here's a bunny.
Yeah.
So there's some questions about things like that. But I mean, I do think it's a little bit of out of character for him to like kidnap and keep somebody when like he kills everybody so quickly. Like, why not just kidnap more people if that's your goal? Like, and there was no hint that there was a sexual element to it or anything like that, which is good because I think that it would be very tough to watch a movie where there's a Jason who rapes people. I'm sure there's an indie film that is that concept, a Jason type character that does that. But I mean, this movie just, gets close enough to the line, but never crosses it. And it just makes it kind of popcorn movie. And it, like I said, it made good money. Just the problem was it didn't make enough. Because let's see. So the budget for the movie was estimated at $19 million. And in the U.S., it grossed $43 million on its opening weekend and en route to $91 million worldwide. So at $91 million worldwide in 2009, that was a success. That made enough money that there should have been a sequel based on just pure numbers. But the kind of mixed reaction to it, I think, really dampened their enthusiasm. And then the following year, they had the Nightmare on Elm Street movie that did poorly. Once again, made decent enough money, but just the reaction was so poor, they just kind of...
Yeah.
Because I was listening to one of the podcasts, one of those producers even said just like the constant hate that they got from everyone over those movies just made it tough to go on.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And I see that, and I don't, like you said, I don't know what you want out of these movies.
Yeah.
Because I know like some of the scripts that were out there for the movies that didn't get made are about like, the winter and snow and all that stuff. And
I read some of the synopsises. Yeah.
And they sounded about like, nothing that far out.
Just changing the setting or...
Changing the setting and changing like people going up like a watchtower or something, like nothing that really flipped the script and made it that different from the prior movies or even the movies that kind of took a lot of elements from those. Because like the Wrong Turn movies, those are more of like the Hills Have Eyes, Texas Chainsaw, but any movies where people go out in the woods and get killed, there's all these things that have been done that you then would have trouble finding something really new to do. You put Jason in a modern urban setting and it kind of falls apart pretty quickly because that movie wouldn't be that long, really. So I'm not sure where you go.
Like you said before, I want to see a series and it's different directors going crazy with the idea.
Yeah, no restrictions.
And, it's just like whatever you want to put situation, you put Jason in, or who you want to be up against, based on whoever you can create. Like I would like to see that and just have fun with it all.
I mean, because like you could even have... there's a group that has a John Wick type character with him who's trying to lay low for something that's part of the group that's camping out, and then Jason comes, and then you set up the ultimate confrontation between this uber competent, mercenary type dude or woman. You could have some badass, female equivalent like what was it, Charlize Theron movie, Atomic Blonde, like have one of those types of characters square off with Jason in the third act or something. And then you have it intercut between, criminal meetings and stuff. I mean, if you just do something different.
Yeah. Or lean into Jason, being infantile. You know what I mean? Like, they do that at the end whenever, at the end of the films, whenever, I'm pretending to be the mother in part 2 and stuff. But, but you know what I mean? Like, you can just totally do some things with this character because it's like most of the ideas seem to be like, well, what can we think of new as far as characters that get killed by Jason? You know what I mean? Like it's like all you're waiting for is to create new situations for him to terrorize people. So, and I'm sure you can think of some great ones, but at the end of the day, like why not replace with any other killer and make your own thing?
I mean, even this is a concept. Make it a period piece and make Jason have died in the 50s or whatever, and set it in the 80s. I don't know. There's too much 80s stuff. Maybe you set it in the 40s and 70s, so it's just a different era. But then, the camp shut down because of that, and there's nobody's been there since then. And then some different like drug dealers or criminals or whatever like decide to hold their meeting there because it's kind of off the beaten path and out of the way. And like I said, you have like the kind of badass killer dude there. That would give you a little bit different flair.
Yeah.
Because like the bikers that were there in part 3, they weren't very competent.
Yeah.
They died pretty easily. I mean... wasn't that where the guy got his arm cut off? I'm forgetting what all happened. I can't remember.
But I did like the bikers in that one.
But, just doing something different at the same time, then people get mad if you don't follow the formula. Yeah. So I'm not really sure where you take that series.
Yeah, me either.
More so than some of the others.
Yeah. I don't blame them for just letting it die. Or not letting it die, but just kind of waiting it out. I don't know.
Yeah, I would love to see them do a series where it's different people's takes on it that are, low stakes, lower budget, but they're able to do kind of whatever they want.
That would be easier to swallow for fans because they're like, this is just one episode. This isn't the new film and the new way things are going to go.
This isn't canon.
Yeah.
You could even call it the Crystal Lake Chronicles or some bull like that and just change it up and have different approaches to the stories and different time periods, different, all kinds of stuff. And then you get an idea of what do people respond to. But then again,
I want to make one where his mask is like the mask from The Mask.
Oh, the Jim Carrey.
And he turns
comic.
in basically to basically a cartoon killer where he can do anything and pull anything out, so he kills people in increasingly elaborate ways.
So, what was that movie? Holidays?
Was Anthology?
Not Tales of Halloween. Where it's like the Jason type killer that's going after the girl, but then there's like the little alien dude.
Yes, I kind of remember that. I mean, I saw that movie.
Yeah. Because I was just trying to think that was kind of like a weird little twist. I don't think that works as a feature idea. But then you had Final Girls, which made it like they're real life people that get sucked into a movie that's about that type of stuff. Yeah. And then You Might Be the Killer is kind of like a different take on how somebody becomes the killer.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot that you can really do in that variation. So, yeah, I guess we can kind of give our score is on the 2009 Friday the 13th. So giving this movie a score out of 10, let's see, because the user reviews and stuff on this aren't super high. Because the user reviews at 5.6 out of 10, the Metacritic's at 34. I remember what the Rotten Tomato score was. It wasn't very high either.
I mean, for me personally, I give it around, this isn't saying I hate the film at all, but I give it maybe around a 6 or so. Maybe close to a 7. And actually, I quite like it as a Friday the 13th film, but that's saying as a Friday the 13th film. I watched Jennifer's Body before this and then Piercing, and this was the totally fine, palate cleanser.
Yeah.
Cleanser, I was fine just watching this film and it being just what it is. But having said that, this is not going to be, at the top of any of my list.
Yeah.
Just because there's not much to it other than just the getting a reason and conceit for Jason to kill people.
See, so the tomato meter was at 25%, and the audience score is 45% on Rotten Tomatoes, and the critic consensus, though technically well constructed, Friday the 13th is a series rehash that features little to distinguish it from its predecessors.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's inaccurate.
No, yeah.
I think if you're rating this on the scale of slasher movies and stuff like that, like you said, a 6, something like that is pretty fair in terms of all movies. If I'm going to be, because sometimes it's all just relative. If I'm saying, am I going to watch this or, Zodiac or something, there's no comparison there. But, is one of those movies. It's not the worst in the series. Some people might hate it, but I don't see how you watch this and say this was a worse film going experience than Jason X. Or, maybe some people like Jason X just in a fun way. Yeah. It's kind of like a ironic way, but this is a worse film watching experience than Jason Goes to Hell. Or most of the movie, he's not even in the mask and Jason. He's in other people's bodies doing weird stuff with his little penis slug thing. But yeah, in terms of the series, a 6 out of 10, not in the top 3 of the movies for me, but definitely not the worst.
No, it's a fine addition. I'm glad they made it. I had a good time in theaters watching it years ago, and I didn't buy it afterwards. I just bought it, somewhat recently with a triple pack, but I would revisit this again in 10 years or so one time. You know what I mean? It's totally fine, but yeah, it's they did what they could with it, I think.
Yeah, so that'll wrap up our discussion of Friday the 13th from 2009. If you're listening via iTunes, you can do us a huge favor and leave a review. That helps other people find the podcast. We always enjoy seeing feedback if people are watching and listening via YouTube, or you can always send us an email at podcast@housebyvideostore.com. You can find links to all of our social media accounts at housebyvideostore.com. Find links to our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all that stuff. We have the short film They Knock, which has been out recently, so you can check that out. Then our short shared was shared by That's a lot of uses of the word shared. The short was shared by Bloody Disgusting as part of their World of Death video series. So I think it's the second short in the compilation. It has 4 different shorts. You can check all those out, which is cool. And if you want to follow us specifically on the internet, you can find me on Instagram at the William Caps.
And I'm at Beloved Sean on Twitter.
And that'll wrap up this episode of the House Movie Store podcast. Thanks for listening.